This debate today, it's about who gets to be an American. What opinions do we have to be counted as Americans? This is what this debate is about, Madam Speaker. There is this idea that you are a suspect if you are an immigrant, or if you are from certain parts of the world, or a certain skin tone, or a Muslim.
The debate in Congress began with Ilhan Omar focusing on the question of who truly gets to be seen as an American. She argued that immigrants and Muslims are too often treated with suspicion and used that point to defend her record. However, many critics saw her remarks differently. They believed she was trying to redirect attention away from her own controversial statements. Instead of addressing concerns about her past comments, she presented herself as being unfairly targeted. But the criticism wasn't about her background, it was about her repeated remarks that many viewed as divisive and critical of America's allies. In the end, her speech raised more questions about accountability than about identity or inclusion.
For this side of the aisle, they do the other. Because when another colleague on my side said something about 9/11, I also voted to have her removed from the Education Committee because I thought that was inappropriate. So I'm being consistent here, and I hope my colleagues will do the same to show that this is about consistency and accountability, because we should not have an individual with those views on the committee that is tasked with representing our country and our Congress to foreign nations. I yield back.
Omar brought up how Republicans once questioned Barack Obama's citizenship and how Donald Trump fueled the birther movement. But that argument didn't connect with the moment, because the discussion wasn't about Trump or Obama, it was about her own words and conduct. By shifting the focus to race and religion, she attempted to frame the criticism against her as an attack on her identity rather than her statements. Many in Congress saw this as an intentional tactic to avoid accountability while portraying herself as a target of discrimination. In doing so, she turned what could have been a sincere dialogue into another polarizing exchange that left little room for honest reflection.
Ilhan Omar has not just done this once or twice. She has repeatedly made anti-Semitic comments, anti-Israel comments, anti-American comments, to diminish what occurred on September 11th.
Then Representative Nicole Malliotakis from New York took the floor and spoke with clear conviction. She made it known that she wasn't just echoing others, she wanted her words firmly on the record. Malliotakis directly called out Ilhan Omar for promoting what she described as anti-American and anti-Israel views while serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Her delivery was steady and confident, leaving no doubt about her stance. She emphasized that serving on such an important committee comes with a responsibility to represent and defend the United States, not to undermine it from within. Her remarks drew attention for being both respectful and unapologetically direct, setting a tone of seriousness and principle in the chamber.
To then go ahead and compare U.S. military, our nation, to terrorist organizations, this is completely outrageous, and my colleagues and I are vociferously calling for her to be removed from the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
Malliotakis shared that she had personally heard Omar compare the United States and Israel to groups like Hamas and the Taliban during committee discussions. That remark deeply unsettled lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. To place democratic nations in the same category as violent organizations, Malliotakis said, was not just offensive but reckless. She stressed that comments like those weaken America's standing around the world and diminish the sacrifices made by the men and women who have fought to protect freedom. Her statement reminded everyone that words spoken in positions of power carry real weight, especially when they touch on matters of national honor and global trust.
She is a liability to that committee. Think about, when I went to Israel in 2019 and I spoke with citizens there, they for the first time felt the United States was wavering in its support.
Another key point Malliotakis addressed was Omar's claim that the United States was responsible for the turmoil in Venezuela. Malliotakis pushed back firmly, explaining that Venezuela's collapse was not caused by America but by years of failed socialist and communist policies under Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. She emphasized that this distinction is critical because blaming the U.S. distracts from the real issue, the damage caused by oppressive regimes and failed ideologies. Malliotakis argued that Omar's comments fit into a broader pattern of faulting America for global problems rather than recognizing the dangers of governments that strip their own people of freedom and prosperity. Her remarks drew attention to the importance of defending truth over political narratives.
Because of members like Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This is enough already. She should be removed. She's a liability to the community.
The most emotional moment in Malliotakis' speech came when she reminded the chamber of Omar's past comment referring to the September 11th attacks as "some people did something." For millions of Americans, those words felt deeply dismissive of one of the darkest days in U.S. history. Malliotakis said it was unacceptable for any public official, especially a member of Congress, to speak so lightly about the deadliest attack ever carried out on American soil. She argued that such a remark showed a serious lack of judgment and respect, particularly from someone serving on a committee responsible for national security. In her view, that single comment was reason enough to question whether Omar should hold that position at all.
And she's a liability to the United States of America. Having her in Congress, I think, is very detrimental for our nation. And it's very unfortunate because, she came to this country as a refugee, just like my mother did from Cuba.
Malliotakis made it clear that her position had nothing to do with party loyalty. She reminded everyone that when a Republican colleague once made an inappropriate comment about 9/11, she also voted to remove that member from committee duties. That consistency gave her words real credibility. This wasn't about defending one side or targeting the other, it was about holding everyone to the same standard. In a political climate often divided by partisanship, her focus on fairness and accountability stood out. Malliotakis' message served as a reminder that true integrity means standing by principle, even when it's inconvenient for your own party. She should have a profound
appreciation for the opportunity that this nation has given her, that she could rise to become a United States member of Congress. But unfortunately, she repeatedly badmouths our nation, and she does it publicly, and is not somebody who should be on the Foreign Affairs Committee representing our nation to other nations.
Despite Malliotakis' strong defense of American values, much of the mainstream media portrayed Omar as the victim. Many outlets framed her removal as an act of political payback, downplaying the legitimate concerns raised about her past statements. Malliotakis and her supporters pointed to this as a clear double standard, where some public figures face harsh consequences for their words, while others are excused under the guise of partisanship. They argued that this kind of selective outrage shows how easily narratives can be shaped to protect influence instead of defending honesty and accountability. It became less about truth and more about whose side you were on, which is exactly what Malliotakis had warned against.
For this Omar resolution, like Congressman Mays and Congressman Gonzalez, are concerned of what they see sort of like tit for tat retribution that your new majority is taking against a Democratic member of the House. Is this a message you want to send to voters as you?
At the core of Malliotakis' message was a straightforward principle: anyone serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee must put America first. You can't represent the United States on the global stage while repeating the same talking points used by those who oppose it. Her point was firm yet patriotic: holding leaders accountable isn't an act of hostility, it's an act of loyalty. Malliotakis reminded her colleagues that defending the nation's reputation and values isn't about partisanship or division, it's a basic responsibility of public service. Every elected official, she said, should treat that duty with the seriousness and respect it deserves.
That's the clear part, how it's not tit for tat. So let's just put it in perspective of what the Democrats did and what Republicans are doing. So the Democrats in the last Congress removed Republican members from all committees. They even judged one Republican member not based upon what she had said as a member of Congress, but what she said prior to ever getting here. And they removed from all committees. I'm not removing people from all committees. And I'm not judging something that someone said when they're not a member of Congress. Now, the first two people...
In the end, Allison Reacts summed it up perfectly. This moment was never about silencing different opinions, it was about standing up for what it truly means to love and respect your country, even when doing so isn't the easy choice. Malliotakis showed real courage by speaking out when many chose to stay silent, and her words reminded everyone that truth, integrity, and unity still matter. She proved that patriotism isn't about partisanship, it's about principle. So, what do you think? Should Omar have ever been part of that committee in the first place? Share your thoughts below. And as always, here at Allison Reacts, we stand firm for American values
We did
every
not allow
single
to be
time.
on Intel. If you got the briefing I got from the FBI, and I know you all personally believe it as well, simply as an American, you know Swalwell should not serve on the Intel. I'd love to take a show of hands here. How many believe, if you're a member of Congress, and the FBI says nothing, but the moment your leadership appoints you to the Intel Committee, the FBI comes knocking on the leadership's door and says, we have a problem, this person has a relationship with a Chinese spy. How many believe that that person should stay on Intel? So, yes, it's not the same, and he's no longer on Intel. But there are a number of other Democrats concerned. Now, the chairman of the Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, I actually believe I helped him. Because what he did to the Intel Committee, he used that position as chairman, knowing classified information that others didn't, and he conveyed to the American public something that was not true to try to confuse them on a number of times. From the whistleblower, even the Washington Post acknowledged that that is true. What he did when he went after Devin Nunes, even the Inspector General said he was lying.
Every time Ilhan Omar faces criticism, she often responds by saying she's been misunderstood or unfairly judged because of her background. But as Malliotakis emphasized, this issue isn't about race or religion, it's about accountability. When you're elected to represent the American people, your words carry real influence. Deflecting instead of taking responsibility sends the wrong message, that claiming victimhood is easier than showing humility. That's not leadership. It's avoiding accountability while calling it activism. Malliotakis reminded Congress that when lawmakers speak against their own country, those words echo far beyond the chamber. The world is listening, and how America's leaders talk about their nation shapes its image on the global stage.
He turned the Intel Committee into an impeachment committee. So now Schiff serves on Judiciary. That is actually the committee for impeachment. That is where he should serve. So now the Intel Committee would go back to the responsibility that it has to protect the American public. Now when it comes to Congresswoman Omar, based upon what she had said, the anti-Semitic comments, it's all about the Benjamins. The military in America is equal to Hamas and the Taliban. On 9/11, something happened that day. Even the former Democratic chair of the committee believed her comments were wrong. When a resolution was brought up to deal with this last time, she never apologized. They changed the resolution to say anti-Semitism is wrong. We're not removing her from other committees. We just do not believe when it comes to foreign affairs, especially the responsibility of that position around the world with the comments that you make. She shouldn't serve there. But this is what if it was tit for tat, we would have picked people, took them off all committees, and said nothing about it. We don't believe in that. I just had a conversation with the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries. What I asked him to do was,
every word spoken in those chambers carries weight far beyond Washington. The Foreign Affairs Committee isn't just another political role, it represents the United States to the rest of the world. So when a member draws comparisons between America and extremist groups, it doesn't challenge policy, it damages credibility. The real issue here isn't freedom of speech, it's the responsibility that comes with holding influence and maintaining respect on the global stage. At its heart, this debate is about what patriotism truly means. Malliotakis argued that loving your country doesn't require ignoring its flaws, it means standing up for its values, even when that stance is unpopular. On the other hand, Omar's critics believe her words often cross the line from thoughtful critique into outright condemnation, creating division instead of dialogue. Patriotism means strengthening your country, not tearing it down. When an elected official speaks more harshly about America than about its enemies, that's where a clear line must be drawn. The moment Malliotakis spoke out, many Democrats rushed to defend Omar, calling the decision to remove her political theater. But where was that same outrage when Republicans faced similar consequences for far less? That kind of selective outrage is exactly what frustrates so many Americans. Malliotakis called it out directly: accountability should be for everyone, not just when it benefits one side. If Congress wants respect from the people, it first has to respect its own rules and principles. For New Yorkers like Malliotakis, September 11th isn't just a page in a history book, it's personal. She lived through that day, saw the smoke rise over the skyline, and felt the grief of a city under attack. So when Omar described it as "some people did something," it hit deeply. It wasn't just offensive, it reopened a painful wound. Malliotakis spoke for millions of Americans who remember that day vividly and refuse to let the memory of those lost be diminished or rewritten. She also took aim at the growing culture of political spin, where narratives often replace truth. In her view, defending America shouldn't be controversial, yet somehow, in today's climate, expressing pride in the country can make you a target. Her speech pushed back against that mindset. She warned about how facts are twisted by emotion and accountability is replaced by excuses. Malliotakis wasn't afraid to cut through the noise and say what many Americans have been thinking but are often afraid to voice. Her decision to confront Omar wasn't about scoring political points, it was about doing what she believed was morally right. In a Congress often divided by party loyalty, Malliotakis stood out by showing that real leadership isn't about applause or popularity, it's about conviction. One voice, spoken with honesty, can still make a difference in a room full of political noise. She reminded her colleagues that serving in Congress means representing all Americans, not just one political base. When leaders use that platform to spread division, it damages the unity the nation so desperately needs. True representation, she said, means standing for principles that protect everyone: freedom, faith, and fairness. Whether or not you agree with her politics, Malliotakis' speech reflected something rare: a genuine belief that America is still worth defending. Watching mainstream coverage of the exchange, you'd think Omar was the one wronged and Malliotakis the aggressor. But many of those clips were edited, cutting out key context. That's exactly the manipulation Malliotakis warned about. The media no longer just reports, it frames. And those frames shape how millions perceive the truth. That's why, as Allison Reacts pointed out, platforms that show the full picture matter more than ever. When the debate ended, one thing was undeniable: this wasn't simply about removing Omar from a committee. It was about reaffirming what it means to serve America with integrity. Malliotakis' stand will be remembered not for partisanship, but for principle. She reminded everyone that words matter, loyalty matters, and truth matters. Because if those are lost, so is the very foundation that makes America exceptional, and that's something no committee and no country can afford to lose.
But I don't know the definition exactly what all that's going to mean. I think that should be clear. So if there is a concern, it's not tit for tat, but I think in moving forward, every single member of Congress has a responsibility to how they carry themselves. Let me finish the question. And it's responsible upon us to let them know what that is, and then what is the due process in a bipartisan way that we can deal with it. So I'm going to put a group of Democrats that Hakeem will select and a group of Republicans, and we'll work to come and clarify the rules and pass something for not only this Congress, but future Congresses.
There's an acrimony right now in Congress. We've seen it play out in many committee hearings where members are calling each other names. This vote with Congressman Omar as a backdrop against this. With the acrimony between Republicans and Democrats right now, how can the American people be confident that you'll be able to get things done?
Because this is nothing like the last Congress where you move somebody from all committees. This is nothing like the last Congress where you have a speaker that tells Republicans they can't even be on committees. This is nothing like the last Congress where they would deny the rights for bills to even go through committee. This is nothing like the last Congress where you never had an open rule. So let's just judge the few weeks we've had now to the last Congress. This is the first time in 7 years any bill has come to the floor in an open rule. Almost a decade since that has come to a bill has come to the floor that's not an appropriation bill. Look at what we've also done the first week. In a bipartisan way, 146 Democrats joined with us, where we opened a select committee on China. This is actually a fundamentally different Congress. I've had Democrats coming up to me telling me we're running it much better, especially the time allotment. They like the openness and the working. I'll give you another example for an inner workings, right? There's times that I was going to be given a briefing. I call up the minority leader, take the briefing with me. Because there's ways that I look at the way we were treated in the past I don't think was right. And I'm glad you asked this question because this is a much different Congress, much more. Now the public can actually be here. You can be here, which